Well, one of the great things the Cooperative Extension Service provides is the identification of plant material or disease problems on your plants. And during the summer months, we get a lot of samples at both the county offices and at our offices here in Stillwater. But there are a few things that you can do to help us in this diagnosis. And with us today is David Hillock. He's our consumer horticulturist, and David is going to give us a few tips on how to better provide information so that we can get information back to you in a more timely manner. And thanks for being with us today, David.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I guess let's start out with maybe some identification problems that people have. They send in samples, and what kinds of samples do you see?
We see all kinds of samples in the offices. Oftentimes they just send in leaves though. And in order for us to properly diagnose the plant, we need more information about the plant. And some of the things that they can provide for us other than just leaves. For example, this was a leaf that was sent in, and it could quickly be diagnosed as or identified as a catalpa tree. But however, there is another plant that looks very similar to this, and with the use of the stem, we can quickly identify it as a paulownia instead. And the difference is that their leaves are arranged differently on the stem, and the fruit is different, and those are specific characteristics to that tree and separates them from the other tree species, the catalpa. So what we'd really like for you to do is, when you send in a sample for plant identification, is to send in as much of the plant parts as possible. For example, the stems have characteristics on them that help us identify them from other species. The fruits, the leaves, flowers if they are present. As much of the plant parts as we can get, the easier it is for us to identify them.
Okay. Now, if a person doesn't have a plant part, can they just describe these to you?
Yes, if you don't have them and you know that you've seen them in the past, that information should be written down or provided for us when you send in the sample. Again, if you know what kind of flower it is, what color it is, and what time of year it blooms, that's helpful to us. And same with the fruits. If you know what color they are, what kind of fruit they are, what time they appear, then all those things help us to separate them from other types of species.
Okay.
Another example that we received was this plant here, and this is actually a pretty good example of what you should send in. It's got the stems. It actually has flowers and fruit that are still on the tree, as well as the leaves, and it was easier for us to identify this. Another thing that we would like for you to provide with us is, where are you seeing this plant growing? Is it a wild plant, or is it a cultivated plant that you find in your yard? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes that will help us also quickly identify the plant.
Okay. Now, if someone has a very, very small plant and they don't want to just chop it off at ground level and send it in to us, what can they do?
A Polaroid picture, it works wonders. I've had people send in not only parts of the plants, but they've sent in pictures of the plant, and that helps a lot. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
That's
so
right.
It helps a great deal.
So now, in addition to plant identification, we also get a lot of disease things. And what do people need to send in when they're wanting us to diagnose a disease problem?
Okay, again, as much of the plant parts, as much of the plant as possible. And here it's important, though, that we receive both specimens of infected plant parts as well as parts of the plant that are not infected. For example, if you sent this piece in to us, or this pine tree, it'd be very difficult for us to tell you what's wrong with this, because the plant's already dead. Disease or insects may be gone or not in this portion of the plant anymore, and so it would be hard for us to tell what was going on with what's going wrong with the plant. Mm-hmm. This plant here, or this piece here, has portions of the dead plant as well as live portions of the plant. If there were a disease present, it would probably more likely be at the zone of where dead tissue meets the live tissue, and we'd be able to sample that out. Things that you don't want to do is just send in dead leaves. This doesn't tell us a whole lot. We need as much of the plant part, or as much as the plant as possible that has the disease on it. Here's a good sample of an apple tree that's got diseased leaves, but it also has other portions of the plant that are healthy, so that we can compare diseased from normal healthy looking foliage. Mm-hmm. This plant here was sent in, and again, we can't tell a whole lot from this, but by further talking with the client, we found out that this was actually a strip, a 3-foot strip from the bottom of the tree to the top of the tree on one side of the plant. which was really kind of odd, but if you think about it, it appeared just after a severe thunderstorm, and so we can probably rule that this was lightning damage.
Okay.
But without that information, we would not have known what it was.
So the more information that people can provide, the better that we can diagnose the problem.
That's right.
Now here we've got a plant. You had picked this disease plant up, but this is actually one sample here that's really fairly alive still, and that'll kind of lead us into how to collect and how to package a sample when you're sending it. What state do you want them to be in when they get here?
Well, again, if you're sending it in for species identification, if it's still alive and it's not all crinkled up and dried up and cracked and falling apart by the time we get it, then the better off it will be. So in that case, what you could do is take a moist paper towel, place the cut end of the plant into it, wrap it around the cut plant portion, and then you can stick that into a plastic baggie and leave it loosely closed, and that will help keep it a little bit more moist and alive until we get it. In the case of a diseased plant, you do not want to moisten the plant or send a wet plant to us and then seal it up in a bag, because by the time it gets to us, secondary organisms could cause decay and contaminate the disease or the sample, so that wouldn't help us very much.
Now, as far as the rest of the packaging, once you've got it in the bag and everything, what do people need to send it in?
There are two ways you can do it. If it's a small sample, you can send them in envelopes, but we prefer that you use the insulated type to help keep them from getting crushed and destroyed. Don't use just normal envelopes. We have had them sent this way with the plants pressed in between pieces of cardboard, and that works okay. Or if the plant is a little bit larger or more delicate, we suggest that you use a very strong cardboard box that won't also be crushed, and use a packing material to surround the specimen inside the box, either paper, shredded paper like this, or the plastic insulated type of packaging.
Okay. So the better shape the sample is in and the more information that the person can provide, the more quickly we'll get the plant diagnosed or the disease problem diagnosed.
Right, absolutely.
Well, good. These are good things to remember, and thank you very much for telling us about this, David. I'm sure this will help a lot.
My pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.